is a calorie deficit is essentially when you are eating less calories than what you burn over an extended period of time. And that is what's required to lose body fat overall. There's no way to really avoid that fact of it. So if you are not losing body fat over a long span of time of tracking your food, working out, hitting a step goal, whatever it may be, you are not in a calorie deficit. You're just by definition not in a calorie deficit, or else you would be losing body fat, or at least losing some kind of tissue, whether that be body fat or muscle. You could theoretically not lose much body fat and lose mostly muscle in a calorie deficit too, but you'd have to be losing some kind of tissue that contains energy. Because when you are over a long period of time, on average, eating less calories than what your body burns, your body needs to make up that difference. Think about like, if you were to spend more money than you make, there's this difference, right, of how many calories you're eating versus how many calories you're burning. And it has to make up that gap somehow in order for your body to function and survive. And it does that by basically pulling calories from your muscle and breaking that down, pulling calories from your body fat and breaking that down, pulling maybe other stores of calories of glycogen, stored carbohydrates. But essentially, muscle mass and fat is generally what you would lose over a long period of time. Now, there are some caveats with this, though, when it comes to calorie deficits. Just because you need a calorie deficit to lose weight over time doesn't mean every calorie deficit is going to be just as effective. And there are smart ways to go about your calorie deficit and not so smart ways to go about your calorie deficit. So as far as how far your calorie deficit, quote unquote, will take you for losing body fat is going to depend on how low or how high you bring your calories, right? If you burn about 2,000 calories per day, you could eat 1,900 calories per day. And that theoretically would end up being a calorie deficit if your body consistently burns 2,000. Now, there are other things that I might even get into this video with when it comes to that, with metabolic adaptation, your metabolism slowing down, where that 100 calorie deficit you're trying to create in that hypothetical example actually isn't a 100 calorie deficit. But let's say theoretically you were eating less calories than what you burn even after those adaptations. Yes, that's a deficit, but that's going to achieve such a slow rate of fat loss where it's not going to probably be as motivating to keep going with it. So that's probably not so smart way to go about your calorie deficit, trying to aim for a super small, tiny calorie deficit to where, okay, like I'm feeling a little bit hungrier because I'm actually eating less calories than when I burn, but I'm not seeing that much of a payoff from it. Second way that's not so smart when it comes to achieving a calorie deficit is having too big of a calorie deficit. So let's say hypothetical example, this person burns 2,000 calories per day. You probably don't want to be eating 1,000 calories per day for your deficit. So now you're achieving this 1,000 calorie deficit theoretically, let's say. And while that might sound nice, because on paper in a perfect world with equations, if you're losing all body fat, that would lead to about maybe 2 pounds of body fat loss per week. Eating 1,000 calories a day consistently is pretty unsustainable for nearly 100% of people. Because it's going to be really hard to get in the proper amount of micronutrients, vitamins, and minerals to actually feel like you can function throughout the day with that low amount of food. It's going to be really hard to get the proper amount of protein to maintain your muscle with that low amount of food, which means you're probably going to lose muscle along the way. That 1,000 calorie deficit also probably doesn't allow you to live flexibly at all when it comes to like eating meals with your family, or when it comes to maybe like going through a fast food drive-through, but still sticking with your calorie range or calorie goal, whatever it may be. You're probably only going to have to really, or be able to have maybe like either one big meal a day or maybe two small, tiny meals a day to fit within that window. And your fat intake is probably going to end up being super low, which can cause some hormonal issues if you're doing that consistently too over a long period of time. So a 1,000 calorie deficit, a huge deficit, probably not the best way to go, because you're just going to be doing something that is so extreme and so unsustainable. You're not going to be able to do it for more than a few days. And then what's likely going to happen too is you're going to build up all of these cravings. You're going to build up all of this hunger from those 3 days, that then that fourth day, you're going to end up binging in the opposite direction and going way over your calories for probably a few days in a row. And now you're just back to square one. And you did all of that hard work for those 3 days, eating very few calories with nothing to show for it. So not a great way, not a smart way to go about it either. Another not so smart way to go about your calorie deficit is to, even if you are eating a moderate amount for you, like a good sustainable amount of calories that achieves around roughly 1 pound of body fat loss per week. Maybe you're in a 500 calorie deficit per day. Most people, and this is where so many people go wrong. This is probably one of the biggest ones too. They will type in their stats into a calculator or ChatGPT and be like, okay, how many calories does my body need to lose 1 pound of fat per week? And it'll spit out this number. So let's say this example, this person burns 2,000 calories a day, and it says, okay, eat 1,500 calories per day to lose weight or to lose fat. Most people will take that number and they will think, okay, that is my gold standard number, and I'm going to eat that number all 7 days of the week, every week for this month, every month for the next 3, 4, 5, 6 months to get to their goal. And that is a recipe to run your body into the ground too, because now every day, right? Let's say you do that for 4 months. That is 120 days, roughly 16 weeks, roughly straight, that you every single day are putting your body into a calorie deficit. And a 500 calorie deficit is not. It's not a small deficit, right? It's not an extreme one, but it's not small. It's a moderate deficit that you are going to feel. If your body burns 2,000 calories a day and you were eating 1,500, you are going to feel that. Like you're going to feel that extra hunger and feel that urge to eat a little bit more to, balance those calories with, how much you're burning. And what happens when you even eat in a modest calorie deficit over time, if you do it for long enough without taking breaks in between to increase your calories, your hunger will just continue to rise and rise and rise. Your fatigue will continue to increase, and your energy will probably continue to decrease pretty consistently over a span of multiple weeks too. Gym performance will probably go down. Even just your kind of mental sanity or psychology around food will continue to probably get worse over that 16-week span. You'll continue to think more about food. You'll be more food focused. You'll have stronger cravings. You'll want to binge more often if you try to stick to that even modest 500 calorie deficit all 7 days of the week for multiple weeks in a row without having any days in between that are higher in calories. So this is why when we work with clients, we typically, for nearly everybody, have 1 day a week at least, sometimes two, that we are aiming for closer to our maintenance calories. And that allows for some of this extra hunger, extra fatigue, extra food focus that you experience over longer periods of time as your body's losing body fat. It helps to reduce those symptoms a little bit, which makes that calorie deficit even more sustainable over a longer period of time. And there also is something to those higher calorie days, just like, and these aren't binge days where we're just like cheat days eating whatever. We're eating close to our maintenance, still listening to our hunger, but we're just trying not to be in a calorie deficit for at least 1 day per week. Research is really mixed with this as far as does this improve your metabolism or boost it? But I've seen anecdotally time and time again, you do get a little bit of a boost in energy that next day with your workout, just mental clarity in general, even just like the mental fatigue, like you feel a little bit more energized. You're like, okay, I had my day, kind of refeed myself, eat a little bit more. Now I'm ready to get back to my fat loss range of calories the next day. I've seen it time and time again. It helps so much there. Now, the fourth thing that people go wrong with is that example that I just gave. Maybe they are implementing these maintenance days throughout the week, but they will still try to repeat that cycle of being in a fat loss phase for too long. They will do this for 4 months, 5 months, 6 months straight with, 6 days of the week, low calories, 1 day, maybe maintenance. And some people can get away with this. If you're somebody who has a lot of weight or a lot of body fat to lose, let's say you're 300 plus pounds, 400 pounds, you could maybe do that calorie deficit basically for the majority of the time for that long of a time duration. But if you are somebody who is, I would say, like under 300 pounds, for sure under 250 pounds, you are probably going to need longer, what I call diet breaks in between your intermittent fat loss phases throughout the process. So this is going to vary person to person as far as how often you have to implement these diet breaks. And these diet breaks are basically, instead of bringing your calories up to around maintenance level for just 1 day, like I kind of mentioned, we routinely do in our fat loss phases. For these diet breaks, we will bring calories up to maintenance for 2 weeks at a time. Sometimes, depending on the client's timeline and when they have vacations and when they want to achieve a certain goal, we might shorten it to maybe 1 week, maybe. And then other clients, depending on the time of year, maybe it's around the holidays, maybe they have different vacations or whatever it may be. Sometimes we extend these diet breaks maybe 3 weeks, maybe even 4 weeks. And sometimes when a client has been in multiple fat loss phases and they've lost maybe 40 pounds, it's actually time for them to do an even longer diet break of maybe a month and a half, maybe 2 months of eating around maintenance to really allow their body to settle into its new set point as far as like the new body weight and body fat level that they're at now after they've lost it, right? If they've obviously haven't been consistent, haven't lost it, that's a different story. But assuming you go through a successful fat loss phase and you execute these diet breaks, I've seen them just help people, at least it seems like, help them settle into their new body fat set point to get their body comfortable kind of maintaining this lower body fat level before making another push into another fat loss phase. And what those diet breaks do, they help to basically reduce all of those symptoms that I mentioned, that like one maintenance calorie level day does throughout the week, but just to a higher degree, right? And how often we want to do these diet breaks, like I said, for somebody who's really overweight or has a lot of weight to lose, you could maybe do a fat loss phase for, 5 months, maybe with, these 1 or 2 maintenance days per week and really get through there. But I've seen through just my, almost 10 years of coaching clients one-on-one and even my own experience is that once a client or a person gets probably somewhere around 8 to 12 weeks into a fat loss phase, or maybe they have lost somewhere around, let's say 5 to 10% of their body weight, maybe closer to like 7.5% of their body weight, but let's say 5 to 10%. So if somebody's, let's say 250 pounds, once they've lost 12.5 to maybe up to 25 pounds, somewhere in that range, it's probably a good idea to do. And, if you're losing 1 pound on average per week, losing roughly, 12-ish pounds, it's going to take roughly 3 months. So it kind of falls within, or 12 weeks. So falls within that timeline that I kind of mentioned. But once you've kind of been in a fat loss phase for, let's say, 3 months, and you've actually been consistent with it, and you've lost maybe 10 to 15 pounds, that's when it's probably a good time to take at least 2 weeks to build your calories up to maintenance. And we like to kind of do these in 2 small jumps. The first week of the diet break, we'll jump calories up a little bit. The second week of the diet break, we'll jump calories up a little bit more, just to kind of get the digestive system a little bit used to eating a little bit more food more frequently. But doing that for 2 weeks will make a big difference in how energized you feel going into that next fat loss phase to keep moving, assuming there's still more body fat you want to lose. It will make a big difference in your even just strength performance in the gym. Like, you get a little bit of a boost after that 2 week diet break of, okay, like I've had 2 weeks to kind of give my body more food, more fuel for recovery, and to even, store more carbs in my muscles for glycogen. I get a little bit of a boost in those workouts those next few weeks. And even just like I said, mental focus and mentally being ready to, go through another 8 to 12 week spurt of a fat loss phase. It helps tremendously. And physiologically, I really believe there is this, like I said, this training your body to eat at maintenance at this lower body fat level, now that you've lost 10 to 15 pounds of body fat at this point, is so important. So your body can feel, quote unquote, safe in a sense at that lower body fat. So then when you go into that next fat loss phase, those symptoms of your hunger ramping up, the symptoms of your fatigue increasing, your energy going down, those don't heighten as quickly. And they kind of get a little bit of a, quote unquote, reset. Now, like I said, when it comes to research showing this, there are some hints towards it for sure. Physiologically, is it proven necessarily? I would say no, but I've seen time and time again through experience, those diet breaks are so key, because it makes something like losing, 40 to 50 pounds so much more doable, because you're mentally focused on losing it in smaller 10 to 15 pound chunks versus losing it, 40 to 50 pounds all at one time, essentially. And then also too, I think just the confidence that you gain in maintaining that weight long term is so much greater, because once you achieve that 40 or 50 pound weight loss goal, let's say if that's your overall goal, well, if you don't learn to maintain it in those 10 to 15 pound chunks along the way, it's going to probably feel like a huge battle or a huge mountain to climb, or a really scary goal to be like, okay, I've been pushing for reducing my calories for so long, and now I don't know how to back off and maintain it. I know how to back off, but every time I've backed off in the past, I've gained it back. I don't feel safe practicing maintenance. So having those diet breaks every 2 to 3 months allows you to feel safe practicing maintenance along the way. And then it helps you to feel confident maintaining it after. So just wanted to come on here and talk a little bit about, that where, yes, a calorie deficit is needed to lose body fat, but there are strategic ways to go about it and not so strategic or great ways to go about it. So hopefully this was helpful, and I will see you guys in the next one.